On my birthday, I didn't anticipate anything grand, just a peaceful dinner with Jessica, possibly followed by a bottle of wine and a relaxing movie night. Although we had moved past the honeymoon phase, our relationship had been stable, or so it seemed. Upon entering the house that evening, carrying takeout from our favorite place and her preferred wine, I aimed to make the night memorable. What struck me as peculiar was the silence in the house. Jessica always played music or had the TV on, even during routine tasks like folding laundry. I called out her name, expecting a witty retort about my tardiness, but there was none. Ascending the stairs, I assumed she was preparing herself. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I hesitated before pushing it open when I heard a sound that halted me in my tracks. A sharp, unfamiliar laugh echoed, seemingly from an unknown Jessica. My pulse quickened, palms sweating instantly. Some primal instinct warned of trouble, yet curiosity compelled me. Pushing the door open further, my world spun. There she was, reclining on the bed adorned with a robe I'd purchased for our anniversary. Her phone stood propped on a pillow, engaged in a FaceTime call with a man. The robe hung loosely, more for ornament than utility. The scene felt surreal, as if I'd invaded another's life. She remained oblivious. Through the call, the man's voice resonated. "I'll meet you this weekend, dear. We can continue where we left off last time." My stomach nodded. Weekend, resuming, last time. Her smile widened. Indeed, she'd thought of me all day. Her voice echoed the saccharine timbre she saved for me when we first dated, before it all became routine. I didn't notice my statue-like stance until her gaze met mine. In a heartbeat, her complexion paled. She stumbled to grasp her phone, but it was too late. Already, I had witnessed the contents. "Josh," she began, her voice quivering, yet her eyes conveyed more panic. Her mind seemed to whirl, concocting preposterous excuses. The audacity of her attempting to deceive me was infuriating. "Who is that?" I inquired, my tone soft, though uncertainty clouded my words. Her lips opened as if to respond, but only silence emerged, and that silence spoke louder than any explanation she could have offered. No heated argument ensued, no shouting or discarded items. There, I was fixed on her, struggling to comprehend the fragments of the life we seemed to share. She, conversely, remained motionless, clutching the phone as if it were a connection to her hidden realm. I departed, closed the door without uttering another word, and that's when the true tempest commenced. As I left the house that night, my mind whirled, my body operating on autopilot. I can't recall picking up my car keys or how long I drove, but somehow I found myself at Ryan's residence. Upon his opening the door, I must have appeared startled because he quickly grew grave. "What happened?" he inquired, drawing me inside before I could utter a word. I slumped onto his couch, still mentally grasping the steering wheel. I replayed in my mind the sight of Jessica sprawled on our bed, engaged in conversation as if I were invisible. To Ryan, I confided everything: the FaceTime call, the robe, her facial expression upon seeing me standing there. Struggling to keep my voice steady under the burden of it, I found myself unable to express all I wanted without a quiver. He remained still, listening intently. When I'd finally finished, he moved closer, his expression a mixture of astonishment and fury. "So what's your plan now? You talked to her, didn't you?" I shook my head silently. All I did was walk away. He seemed taken aback, like he hadn't heard me correctly. "You just left. What was I supposed to do, Ryan?" I pondered options ranging from yelling and destroying things to simply accepting it as a nightmare. I no longer recognize the person she has become. Ryan didn't respond immediately. He ran his hand across his face, evidently searching for the right words. However, there was nothing he could say to rectify this situation. Nothing could erase the memory of her referring to another as babe in our bed where we'd spent years together. The following days were a haze. I steered clear of home as much as possible, opting to stay on Ryan's couch and concoct reasons for extended work hours. But inevitably, I had to return. The house felt unfamiliar now, chilly and silent. I had thought Jessica might attempt reconciliation, perhaps an awkward apology. Instead, upon entering, I found a note on the counter. Josh, it's time we discuss things. I won't let you avoid me indefinitely. The sight of those words made my blood pressure rise. Discuss? I feigned confusion, given her actions. I balled up the message and tossed it away. We didn't need conversation. Nothing she could say would mend this. Yet, secretly, I yearned for answers. That night, I finally addressed the issue. She arrived home as if nothing had transpired. The click of her heels on the hardwood floor, her hair impeccable as always, and that insincere smile stretched across her face. It sent a shiver down my spine. Well, I started, standing in the kitchen while she casually poured herself some water. Who was that man? She stopped mid-pour, her hand stilled. Gradually, she placed the glass down and turned to face me. For an instant, I believed I detected a trace of remorse in her gaze, but it vanished as swiftly as it emerged. It's not as you suppose, she asserted, her tone steady, hinting at rehearsals in her mind countless times. He's merely a friend. A cynical chuckle escaped me, its resonance harsh to my own ears. A friend, that term now. You were on the brink of undressing for him via video call. Her expression hardened, lips forming a straight line. Josh, you don't grasp it. No, Jessica, I countered, patience waning. I comprehend fully. You deceive me, and you have been doing so for an unknown duration. She moved nearer, eyes squinting. Don't distort the facts. You haven't exactly been the ideal spouse either. My jaw tightened. Are you genuinely attempting to accuse me of this at this moment? Her voice grew stronger, edged with bitterness. You haven't been present. You're constantly engrossed in work or with your associates. What did you anticipate? I was lonely. Astonished for a moment, struggling to comprehend her audacity, she was shifting the blame onto me, suggesting that her infidelity stemmed from my neglect. Anger surged within me, boiling from deep inside. Is that your explanation? I inquired, my voice barely restrained, trying to maintain control. You were lonely, so you cheated. You couldn't discuss this with me, instead you sought solace in a stranger. She retorted, crossing her arms protectively. Don't pretend to be innocent, Josh. You hardly notice me anymore. I was dumbfounded by her words. She was evading the truth, dodging accountability. Each word from her mouth made me question my grasp on reality. The most distressing aspect, she spoke with no regret. It was then that I understood I wasn't conversing with my wife anymore. The woman before me was not Jessica, at least not the Jessica I believed her to be. In that instant, as I gazed into her unfeeling eyes, it became clear to me this wasn't something I could mend, not now and maybe never again. The tempest was far from past. I believed our clash would yield understanding, that perhaps hearing her distorted account of events would aid me in choosing my next step. However, things only worsened. As I relived her words, my anger grew. She hadn't merely betrayed me, she had reimagined our entire relationship, making me the antagonist in a tale where she assumed the role of victim. It was more than disrespectful. A few days after that harsh exchange, I realized I needed a respite. Remaining in that house, with its corners filled with memories, was smothering me. I went for a run, hoping to exhaust some of the fury coursing through my veins by pounding the pavement. Upon returning, drenched in sweat, she sat at the kitchen table, typing on her phone as if time held no consequence. As soon as I entered, the air was thick with tension. Not even a moment had passed before she spoke, her gaze fixed on her phone screen. We need to discuss this, she said, her tone flat and weary. The racing of my heart from my run didn't abate despite removing my earbuds, and my anger remained unyielding. I set my keys on the counter and confronted her, waiting for a coherent explanation. You can't continue to ignore me, she went on, still absorbed in her device. We're both grown-ups. We should handle this like adults. The word adults felt strange on my tongue. Adults? I echoed incredulously. Are you discussing maturity now, after everything that's happened? She finally looked up, her eyes narrowing as she leaned back in the chair. Josh, this isn't the end of the world, understand? People make mistakes. You're overreacting. Something within me shattered at that moment. A mistake? That's what this is? So that's what you're labeling it now. You've been seeing another man while I'm here, deceiving me, and then having the audacity to claim I'm overreacting. Her eyes rolled as if attempting to leave their sockets. It's not like I slept with him or anything. Really, I countered, crossing my arms, feeling the tension coursing through my muscles. How gullible do you think I am? Jessica pushed herself up from her seat, causing it to scrape against the floor, and approached the sink to fill a glass with water, as if our marital disintegration was simply background noise. The nonchalance of the situation made me feel like my sanity was slipping away. I don't know what you want from me, Josh, she said, taking a sip. I already told you it was a mistake. I was lonely. You weren't around. I needed someone to confide in. To confide in? You mean flirt with on video call? My voice was quivering now, the bitterness boiling over. Oh, you're so melodramatic, she retorted, finally meeting my gaze directly. Perhaps it's time we call it quits if you're so unhappy, she suggested, causing me to freeze momentarily. The woman before me was not the woman I believed I had wed. This wasn't a spat we could easily resolve or reminisce about later. This was the unvarnished truth staring back at me. She seemed unaffected by her actions. She harbored no regret, displayed no pretense of it. What are you referring to? I inquired softly, striving to maintain my composure. Her gaze held mine, and for the first time, I sensed something chilling within her, something calculating. Leaning against the counter, she folded her arms. Perhaps we should just part ways, Josh, she suggested. You seem to lack trust in me, and I'm tired of explaining myself over a matter that was actually your doing. It feels like I've been hit. I echoed, shock reverberating through me. Smirking subtly, as if triumphant in a devious game, she stated, Indeed, you've been emotionally distant for months. I couldn't help but notice your prolonged absences, be it with friends or work. You've left me feeling abandoned within our marriage. And now, hearing these words, I find myself disbelieving. She skillfully shifted the blame onto me for her infidelity. Standing there, my heart racing, I found myself at a loss for words. All I could think was how detached she appeared, as if this wasn't our shared life she was discussing, but a minor annoyance she had grown tired of managing. Wow, I murmured, shaking my head. You truly don't care, do you? Her expression remained unfazed. Perhaps, Josh, she suggested, it's time we both acknowledge that this isn't working anymore. Perhaps we aren't meant to be together. Her words lingered between us, thick as fog. A part of me conceded her point our relationship wasn't functioning well. Yet it hung in the air, uncertain and unresolved. I wasn't destined for us in this manner, but her flippant remark, as if discussing a gym membership cancellation, sent shivers down my spine. I remained silent, lacked the strength to respond. Instead, I retrieved my coat from the chair and departed. Where are you off to? She queried, her tone edgy. I glanced back, momentarily, to collect myself, prevent an imminent friend's visit while away. With that, I slammed the door shut. As I exited the house that evening, I was unsure of my destination. All I knew was the urgent need to distance myself from her, the suffocating atmosphere in that house. Every utterance from Jessica echoed in my mind, repeating ad infinitum. This isn't working out. Perhaps we weren't meant for each other. I aimlessly drove, the chilly night breeze streaming through the slightly opened window. I wound up at an unremarkable tavern on town's edge, a place where inquiries are seldom made and solitude is easily found amidst cheap whiskey. I took a seat, requested a drink, and gazed fixedly into the glass. The golden liquid twirled sluggishly as I rotated the vessel in my grasp, yet I remained incapable of taking a taste. My mind was preoccupied with our last moment of genuine happiness with Jessica. When had things spiraled so downward? Had I truly been so oblivious, so detached as she suggested? Yet, despite my attempts to analyze it, one fact stood undeniably clear: she'd chosen. This wasn't merely a mistake. She'd moved on from us. Her speech was devoid of warmth, her gaze cold and distant. No regret showed, no desire to mend the situation. She was already departing, leaving me as an obstacle. I took a swallow, the bite of the alcohol providing scant comfort against the turmoil within. While engrossed in my thoughts, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I hesitated before retrieving it, anticipating another hurtful message from Jessica. Yet, the name on the screen brought a sudden pause to my heart. An email from Jessica, with confusion etched across her name. I opened it, my mind whirling through countless scenarios. Was this an apology or words she couldn't utter face to face? However, what greeted me was something far more astounding. The subject line read, "I should have told you the truth a year ago." My grip tightened on the phone as I read the initial line. "Josh, I understand if you despise me now, and you have every reason to, but before we move forward, I need to tell you something I've been concealing for the past year." I blinked, struggling to comprehend. A year? What on earth was she referring to? She proceeded to pour out everything, like a long, suppressed confession bubbling to the surface for months. "Recall our trip to Chicago last year that you thought was about work? It wasn't. That's when I first met him, and we've been together ever since. I didn't intend for things to escalate this way, but here we are. I thought by keeping it a secret, I wouldn't hurt you, but I was mistaken. I apologize." The revelation struck me like a freight train. My breath escaped, and I found myself fixated on the screen, my vision darkening at the edges. This wasn't a recent development or a moment of weakness. It had been going on for an entire year, a whole year of deceit, hidden meetings, living a double life while you were unaware. I'd been deceived. The shock morphed into anger. My mind raced, trying to grasp the callousness of someone keeping such a secret from me. All those times she smiled at me, kissed me, shared a bed with me, knowing there was someone else in the wings. And then it dawned on me painfully. All those business trips, the spontaneous weekend getaways, the mysterious late nights, they weren't what they seemed. The entire ordeal had been an intricate deception, a game she'd played while I was oblivious and gullible enough not to notice. I yearned to shatter something, bellow, perform any act to discharge the rage simmering within me. Yet, all I could do was remain motionless, devoid of feeling. The surroundings around me blurred into insignificance, the cacophony of laughter and clinking glasses sounding alien. In this waking nightmare, I was bereft of a clue as to how to escape. I found myself repeatedly rereading the email. With each reading, a fresh surge of indignation and betrayal coursed through me. It seemed like a cruel jest, a confession thrust upon me when she knew I couldn't evade it. The kind of revelation that didn't merely end a marriage, but demolished everything I believed about the person with whom I had constructed a life. The bartender seemed to catch my dismay as he approached, inquiring softly, "Everything okay, buddy?" I glanced down, noticing my knuckles were white from my grip on the bar edge. "Sure," I replied weakly, unsure of my voice. Truth was, it had been a grueling day, an understatement, really. My world crumbled, and I was clueless about mending the fragments. In the dimly lit bar, it struck me then. This was the turning point. There was no rescue, no dialogue, no reversal. I'd discovered Jessica on that FaceTime call much earlier than she'd let on. Now it was me left to deal with the debris. My marriage, I knew, could not continue post this revelation, not after a year of deceit. I drained my drink, tasting the burn as it descended my throat, then stood up and left. With each step outside the bar and into the frosty evening, I recognized my course of action. This marked the end. The year-old email from my unfaithful spouse after our separation shifted everything, but prior to that moment, I needed to confront the harsh truth. I couldn't coexist with her. No fragment of me remained yearning for a second chance. Our marriage was lifeless. She had extinguished it long before I even recognized the situation unfolding. After leaving the bar, I spent hours driving aimlessly, the city lights merging into one continuous streak as my mind replayed her email like a gruesome montage. A year of deception. How many times had she smiled at me, kissed me, or chuckled at my foolish jokes while knowing that her heart and body were bound to another? Upon returning home, the house was shrouded in darkness. She was either absent or feigning slumber, and frankly, I didn't care. I walked past the bedroom without even a glance, snatched a blanket from the closet, and settled on the couch. That night, sleep eluded me. In truth, I remained there, fixedly gazing at the ceiling as the contents of the email replayed in my mind like flashing neon signs. This wasn't a scenario I ever wanted to confront, yet here we find ourselves. In those silent hours of the night, a truth dawned upon me. Jessica was not merely disengaged from our marriage, she had been for quite some time. She was merely pretending, maintaining the facade while leading an entirely different life hidden behind my back. I served as a mere fixture in her daily routine, the husband who asked few questions and harbored no suspicions. This revelation struck me harder than the betrayal itself. I felt like I had been walking through my own life in a daze. The next day, I made up my mind. Enough was enough. I couldn't continue living this way, unsure of what was genuine, questioning her true identity, and unaware of when she started laughing at me behind my back. Therefore, I initiated the first move in what seemed like a long overdue decision. I contacted a divorce lawyer. Stepping into that office felt surreal, as if I were about to officially declare war on everything I had labored to construct over the past 7 years. The lawyer, a middle-aged woman with piercing eyes and a straightforward demeanor, greeted me with a strong handshake. Her office was modern, consisting of glass and metal, with towering shelves filled with weighty books, seeming to house the answers to countless shattered marriages. "Well then," she said after our customary greetings, "what's brought you here today?" I gathered my composure before recounting everything: the infidelity, the deceit, the incriminating email. By the time I concluded, she was nodding softly, her pen scribbling on a yellow legal pad. "Do you have any evidence?" she inquired, looking at me. I paused. "Evidence?" The only thing I had was that damning email and the image of her lounging on our bed, video chatting with her lover as if I were fading into oblivion. I disclosed the email to her. "That should assist," she remarked, settling back in her chair. "Making your divorce a triumph may not be feasible, but it will undoubtedly benefit you in terms of alimony or property division." I hadn't given much thought to the financial aspects, such as money, our home, and all we'd acquired together. It wasn't about that for me. I just wanted an exit, a way out from this living nightmare. She spoke calmly and professionally. "You're making the right choice. Infidelity is one of the few valid reasons for divorce that courts take seriously. You have leverage, especially if she tries to complicate matters." I nodded, feeling detached from my own self. Divorce, the word seemed weighty, as if it didn't fit in my life. Yet here I was, strategizing on how to disintegrate my marriage in a lawyer's office. It felt strange and unreal. As I stepped out of the lawyer's office, the sky was gloomy, mirroring the heaviness that had enveloped me. No longer consumed by anger, I felt instead a profound weariness, a heavy exhaustion that seeped into my bones. The thoughts of her, the deceit, and the covert activities had lost their appeal. I yearned for an end to it all. A day when I could awaken without feeling as though life had turned upside down. Yet I recognized the most arduous part still lay ahead. I must inform her. I must meet her gaze and utter the words, "It's over." That evening, I returned home earlier than customary, eager to confront the issue. Upon entering, Jessica sat at the kitchen table, engrossed in her phone as if nothing significant had transpired. Her expression was indifferent upon noticing me, devoid of any impending doom sensed near the precipice. "Josh," she mentioned offhandedly, "it seems we need discussion." I hesitated for a moment, scrutinizing her, searching for the woman I once adored, the one who didn't make me feel like an extra tire. However, that woman was now a distant memory. "Yes," I replied, maintaining my composure but firm, "we do." She raised an eyebrow, querying, "Well, what's your intention?" Approaching her, I took a seat opposite her at the table and took a deep breath. "I wish to end our marriage." Her eyes widened, and for a brief instant, I perceived a real shock on her face, as if this was unexpected. She gently placed her phone, seemingly contemplating my words. "Divorce?" she echoed, her tone monotonous, seeming to test the word. "Yes," I confirmed, looking her straight in the eye. "I've had enough, you've had enough. It's over, Jessica." She blinked and slightly tilted her head, the hint of a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Is this about that man?" she inquired. "You've been informed it wasn't casual." I sighed, a sense of tranquility enveloping me. It's not solely about him, it's about the entire situation. For a year, Jess, you've been deceiving me, living a dual life that I can no longer be a part of. Her countenance transformed subtly, a hint of irritation flickering across her features. You're making too much of this, she mumbled, relaxing back in her chair. We've encountered difficulties before, and we've overcome them. This is no exception. I spoke more assertively, my tone harder now. What you've been doing isn't just infidelity. You're trying to reframe this into something it's not. I can't continue like this. She shook her head, emitting a deep sigh, as if this was all an unwelcome hassle for her. Very well, if that's your choice, but don't think this will be simple. You'll come to regret this. I rose, gazing down at her one last time. I already regret every moment I spent with you post-infidelity, and I'm done. Leaving the room behind, I knew there was no going back. The chapter had closed, and it was time for a fresh start without her. The revelation of my desire for a divorce plunged our home into turmoil, as anticipated. However, Jessica's response fell short of the slightest hint of regret upon hearing that our journey together was over. Instead, she waged an onslaught of manipulative strategies, hurled accusations, and engaged in emotional warfare. She refused to surrender without a fight. The day after I broke the news, Jessica began deploying every trick known to her. Initially, she attempted to feign innocence as if she was the one who had been wronged. One morning, finding her at the kitchen table with red, swollen eyes, I questioned whether it was genuine or a staged display. At this point, my emotions were drained. Josh, she whispered, her voice barely recognizable from all night crying, I don't want to lose you. There's still a chance for us to move past this. I recognize my actions were wrong, and I'm prepared to attend therapy, make amends. We can mend this. Her gaze held a mixture of regret and hope that caused a knot of frustration to form in my chest. Therapy, now, following a year of deceit and infidelity, the opportunity for therapy had vanished the moment you embarked on your secret relationship. Jess, it's too late now, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You've been living a facade for a year. This wasn't a simple mistake. You constructed an entirely separate life. I can no longer trust you. She wiped her eyes, making a sound of distress. I never intended to hurt you. I was confused. Yes, I made poor decisions, but it doesn't have to lead to this ending. We've shared too many experiences to simply discard them all. Hearing her attempt to justify herself felt agonizing. Perhaps there was a part of me that wanted her to express remorse, to prove she cared, but now everything she said seemed insincere. Each word she spoke sounded like she was acting, trying to figure out what would cause me to relent. Leaning on the counter, I felt exhausted. It's all done now. You've made your decisions, and so have I. Her expression stiffened. The facade of empathy she had worn vanished, revealing the deceiver who had misled me for months. So that's it? You're just leaving? You think you're an innocent party in all this? She rose from the table, her voice escalating. You weren't blameless either, Josh. You were always engrossed at work, rarely home, too preoccupied for me. What was I meant to do? Wait idly for you to acknowledge my existence. Her familiar tactic surfaced, placing the blame on me. Despite the rising anger, I forced composure. I wasn't going to reward her with another argument. You had options, I said softly but decisively. You could have communicated with me. You could have spoken up if you were dissatisfied. But instead, you opted for deceit. She folded her arms, glaring at me. You're acting like a hypocrite, as you're not blameless in this situation either. I nodded, understanding that this conversation was going nowhere. Go ahead and believe whatever you choose, Jessica. I won't argue with you anymore. Turning to depart, her voice halted me. You'll come to regret this, she sneered, venom evident in every word. You believe you can simply exit our marriage as if it holds no significance? I vow to ensure you pay for this. Don't think for a moment that I'll let you escape unscathed, walking away with everything. Her warning lingered in the silence, but I remained unfazed. I knew she would try to complicate the divorce, but frankly, I didn't care. I was prepared for it. Whatever followed, I was ready to face it. I had already lost the most vital thing, trust in her. The rest was merely details. As time passed, Jessica's conduct grew more erratic. Initially, she was kind, attempting to persuade me to reconsider, preparing dinner, behaving as an ideal spouse, even texting during the day as we used to when things were harmonious. Soon after, she turned frosty, snapping over minor issues, threatening a grueling divorce, and making it clear how much she despised me for ruining her life. However, I remained unyielding. I had made my choice and stood firm. I began sleeping in the spare room, keeping distance from her as we awaited the formal start of the divorce proceedings. I also increased my nights at Ryan's house, merely to escape the oppressive atmosphere at home. And then, on a night when I thought things couldn't become more chaotic, they did. Returning home late after spending time with Ryan, trying to find solace and avoid the explosive landscape that was my household, I noticed immediately that something wasn't right. The house was overly quiet, almost unsettling. Ascended the stairs, assuming Jessica was asleep, and there I found it. The bedroom door slightly ajar, within lay Jessica, engaged in a FaceTime call not with anyone casual, but him. The same man from my initial discovery, the one she had been secretly seeing for over a year. Despite all the deceit, the quarrels, the pledged commitments, there she was, reenacting her prior actions, nestled in the same position where I first saw her with him. Disbelief washed over me. My hands tightened into fists as I stood motionless in the doorway, silent and watchful. She failed to detect my presence initially, wholly engrossed in her conversation. However, her gaze eventually lifted, and upon seeing me, she froze. The man's voice still echoed through the phone, a silly jest he was sharing that elicited laughter, but now replaced by tension. "Josh!" she exclaimed, swiftly lowering the phone. "Were? I hadn't. You never ceased, did you?" I murmured, my voice barely audible, filled with disbelief and revulsion. She remained silent, her silence saying more than words could. I departed without uttering another word, descended the stairs, and exited through the door. This departure was unlike any other. It wasn't merely an escape from the oppressive tension or a fleeting effort to gather my thoughts. This time, it marked the end. There was nothing left to rescue, nothing left to discuss. I had caught her in the act once more, and the last thread of uncertainty regarding my departure vanished. For a while, I drove in silence, surprisingly tranquil despite the turmoil. No more speculation, no more apprehension about her hidden secrets. Now, I knew the truth in all its grotesque detail, and it liberated me in an unexpected manner. No space left for sorrow, no space left for anger, only raw truth remained. Jessica hadn't truly mattered to me before. I clung to the notion of her instead of the reality. Found myself at a budget hotel, nothing extravagant. It was past midnight, and I wasn't keen on conversing with the receptionist. So I paid in cash and ascended to my room. When I eventually settled onto the bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Without question, it was Jessica who called. Yet, for some reason, I answered. As predicted, a string of texts from her arrived, her feelings oscillating wildly between remorse and accusation. "Josh," she wrote, "I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. Can we talk? You don't understand. This isn't what I intended. This is your fault as well. You know that, right? If you choose to abandon this marriage, don't expect it to be effortless. You'll come to regret it." I flipped the phone over without responding and let it drop into the quiet of the room. Let her vent. Let her unravel. I was no longer entangled in her harmful influence. The following morning, I saw my attorney once more. This time, I was prepared to advance decisively. The divorce documents had already been drafted, but now I was eager to expedite the process. Across from her in that polished office, for the first time since this ordeal started, I felt I regained control. "We'll file by week's end," my attorney stated, her voice even and factual. "Given the infidelity, you hold a solid ground. We can argue for an equitable distribution of assets. The House will be a significant topic of discussion, but I believe we can build a compelling case for you." I merely nodded, my thoughts fixated on escape rather than property ownership. The house was merely brick and timber. It no longer held significance for me. It symbolized all that had gone awry. I desired it not, I yearned only for tranquility. As we concluded the meeting, a strange sense of conclusiveness surfaced within me. The end was imminent, with no room for reversal. A few days passed, and events grew increasingly unpleasant. I was at work, attempting to distract myself with the accumulation of emails, when my phone buzzed once more. This time, it wasn't a message from Jessica, but a bank alert that halted me in my tracks. Unauthorized withdrawal of $8,500. My heart began racing, as I hadn't made such a large withdrawal, and the timing was far too suspicious. Logging into my bank account, there it was Jessica had emptied one of our shared accounts. The familiar anger resurfaced, but this time it wasn't a slow simmer. It was an inferno. I called her immediately, my heart pounding in my ears. She picked up on the second ring, her voice irritatingly calm. "What are you up to?" I growled into the phone, struggling to maintain my composure. "What do you mean?" she responded, pretending innocence. "You took money out of our shared account. $8,500, Jessica." "You believe I wouldn't catch you at this," she replied casually, her voice adopting that irritatingly confident tone she used when about to deceive. "I required it for certain matters. Given our marital status, the funds remain communal, Josh. That's still our cash." My grip tightened around the phone, and I had to force myself not to shout in the crowded office. "You can't unilaterally withdraw funds without consulting me first. That's no longer an option." She sighed as if I were overreacting. "It's merely money. Don't make such a fuss. You'll receive your share once the divorce is settled." "I'm filing the paperwork today," I stated evenly, although the threat was evident. "And should you not return that money by tomorrow, rest assured, I will inform the court about this matter." After a prolonged silence on her end, I could almost sense her contemplating her next move. "Very well," she ultimately conceded, her voice filled with annoyance. "I'll return what you sent, but don't misunderstand, I still have my own rights." I chose not to respond. Instead, I hung up, my hands trembling. She was pressing every button she could find, making the situation as difficult as possible for me. However, I wasn't going to crack under pressure. Not now, not after all we've been through. As promised, Jessica returned the money the following day. But by then, I had already submitted the divorce papers. There was no more pretense of civility, no more attempts at maintaining a peaceful front between us. The situation had escalated. A few days later, she appeared at the house while I was gathering my final belongings. I hadn't expected to see her when I did, but she always seemed to appear when I least wanted her around. She walked in as if the house still belonged to her, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Is this it?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe, watching me pack. "Are you truly departing?" You didn't respond, instead focusing elsewhere. "You ensured that outcome," she sighed, her tone feigned and overdramatic. "It didn't have to end like this, Josh." I secured the final bag and faced her. "Indeed, it did. You chose your path. Now I'm choosing mine." She let out an exasperated sigh, pushing off from the doorframe and approaching me. "You'll come to regret this," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "You'll yearn for me." I shook my head, maintaining eye contact. "No, I won't." For the first time in months, I was certain it was so. There was nothing more to pine for. As I exited the house for the final time, leaving her standing solitary, a strange sense of liberation washed over me. It wasn't joy, not at that moment, but it marked the beginning. The conclusion of my life with Jessica had been sealed, and I was prepared to embark on a new journey, one devoid of her deceit, manipulation, and treachery. After a considerable period, I found myself liberated. I believed the most challenging phase had passed as I departed Jessica alone within that dwelling, her threats and arrogance receding into obscurity. The divorce process was underway. I was disengaging from her manipulations, and at last, regaining a portion of my identity that had been concealed beneath a mountain of deceit. I intended to close this episode permanently. However, an email arrived. This development occurred a year following the divorce filing, just as I was gaining momentum in rebuilding my life. My new residence offered respite from her spectral presence. I plunged myself into work, spent more quality time with friends, and even dabbled in casual dating, gradually stepping back into society without her influence looming over me. In the months that followed, Jessica and I had no contact. The last conversation we shared was at the lawyer's office, sealing the divorce. She signed the documents with her usual nonchalant expression, as if none of it mattered to her. I assumed we were done, but then her name appeared in my email inbox late at night, well past my bedtime. My phone buzzed with a notification, and for a moment, I hesitated to open it, suspecting another manipulation attempt or another pull back into her harmful circle. Yet, curiosity prevailed. The subject line caused my heart to race. "You should have told me the truth a year ago." As I read the message, anxiety filled my chest. What could she possibly say after everything? What else was there left to confess? However, nothing could have prepared me for what followed. "Josh, you have every right to hate me after all that transpired, but I must tell you the truth. I don't ask for your forgiveness, but I must confess something that has haunted me for the past year, and I can no longer keep it secret. I should have confessed the truth long ago, but I was too cowardly." My heart pounded, and a shiver ran down my spine as I read this. With each word, my stomach sank deeper. When we grew apart, I was already involved with someone else. You're aware of that, of course, but what you don't know is that it wasn't just a casual fling. He was someone I had been seeing long before I even mentioned my unhappiness to you. Do you recall the trip I took to Chicago for the work conference? That was false. I didn't attend for work. Instead, I went with him. It was there our relationship began. We have been together since then. For over a year, I deceived you every single day. I looked at the screen, feeling my breath escape me. I'd been aware of her infidelity, but the way she revealed it in a detached, systematic manner made me feel as if I were being wounded anew. For a whole year, I lived in a delusion while she led a double life. However, the most devastating revelation was yet to come. There's something else I need to disclose, something I've been hesitant to share because I didn't want to deal with the repercussions. But you deserve the truth. I'm pregnant, and it's his, not mine. My eyes froze on the words, pregnant. This was certainly not my pregnancy. In fact, we hadn't been intimate for months before our divorce. She must have known for quite some time, possibly even during our marriage. And yet she said nothing. I pictured us going through our daily routine, me smiling at her, unaware that she was carrying another man's child. My hands trembled as I continued reading. "I didn't tell you earlier because I didn't want to cause you more pain. I now recognize that hiding this fact was another instance of evading accountability. You deserve the complete truth, though it arrives a year late." The remainder of the email reeked of typical Jessica insincerities, offering empty apologies, explaining away her actions as unintentional, and expressing hope that I could easily let go. She penned it as if this was merely another trivial matter in the ruins of our marriage, a detail that could be dismissed and forgotten. However, I couldn't do so. Not this time. The confined space felt stifling, the air oppressive. I rose, walking back and forth, struggling to comprehend what I had just read. A year of betrayal was not enough. Now she was forming a family with the same man who had devastated mine, and she hadn't even bothered to inform me until it was too late for it to make a difference. She departed our life without a moment's hesitation, constructing a new one in my absence. It wasn't simply infidelity, it was obliterating my existence altogether. Standing motionless for several minutes, the illuminated email on my phone awaited any emotional response. Instead of fear or sadness, I felt an overwhelming emptiness, a profound numbness. It seemed as though the final blow had struck, leaving me bereft of sensation. The urge to hurl my phone, to shout, was strong, but it seemed futile. The damage was done, and I couldn't undo it. Jessica had moved on, leaving me no other option but to follow suit, truly this time. I closed the email, my hands still trembling slightly, and sat on the bed's edge. For a considerable period, I gazed out the window at the city lights, seeking understanding, yet there was none to be found. This marked the end of the line, the conclusion to a tale that should have ended ages ago. I chose not to respond to her email, for I found myself without words. I cut off her contact and discarded her message, not out of desire to erase memories, but due to necessity, complete cessation. If there was one truth gleaned from this ordeal, it was that closure isn't always granted. Those who inflict pain don't always receive justice. And at times, the only remedy for healing is departure, even when a myriad of queries remain unresolved. Thus, I chose to leave, and for the first time in a while, I experienced liberation.